Hello, nice to meet you. Can you please tell us who you are and why you are here?
Hello, I'm Malte, and I'm here at the film festival to screen my documentary called Black BAUHINIA.
All right, so can you please tell us a few words about this project?
Well, this project is originated with my own academic research, and it looks at the development of the so-called localism movement in Hong Kong and the Hong Kong independence movement. And we follow two activists through their times and trials in Hong Kong, and it's been shot over 4 years.
So the first question is, where does this interest for Hong Kong come from?
Right, the interest in Hong Kong is originated a long time ago when I was a student, and I had pen friends from Hong Kong, but then I studied Chinese studies and international relations, and I also was an exchange student in Hong Kong, then did my PhD in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong was always part of my research and my PhD, so it's a dream come through then making a film about this research after so many years. Yeah.
And so how did the film project start actually?
The film project started with the idea of trying to explain or illustrate some of the aspects of my research that are quite difficult to describe, for example, emotions in international relations. But also the second part or second reason was that the idea of localism in Hong Kong is a little bit contested, and we want to show the entire spectrum of what localism means, but it's also not very well known outside of Hong Kong. So we have these two audiences, international audience but also Hong Kong audience, and we think the film offers then a full, complete, balanced picture.
And if you had to describe in a few words localism for people who would have never heard about it?
Right, localism is it's difficult to define, so the film tries many different ways, but we can say it's maybe a movement, maybe it's an ideology, but it's somewhere in between. But the idea is that it looks at protecting Hong Kong's so-called core values of the rule of law, the local cultural identity, local language, local values, civic liberties, from increasing integration with mainland China and therefore infringement on these liberties. So Hong Kong is a very multicultural place, and increasingly the Chinese government is pushing their own understanding of what Chineseness means, and these often young people try to protect their idea of Hong Kong identity, but at the same time also, and I think this is really the core, what makes Hong Kong localism very interesting, very important, they question the relationship between Hong Kong and China as the status quo. So thinking about, why shouldn't have Hong Kong more autonomy? Why shouldn't have Hong Kong the Hong Kongers for the first time their own say in their future? Why shouldn't Hong Kongers think about independence, for example?
This is fascinating because it's a very, very particular situation, and it's extremely interesting. So you started filming in 2017? Right?
Yes.
And then the process of shooting actually lasted a few years.
Right.
So can you tell us a little bit, about this process? So how often would you go to Hong Kong? And more specifically, each time you actually would go to Hong Kong, what were you looking for when going there?
Yes, so we started in 2017 with the first interviews with one of the activists, and it was very experimental. So as I said, I'm an amateur in that regard, but we have excellent local crew that helped me a lot, and we interviewed for a long period of time, and I was a very novice, and one of the activists, Ray, I interviewed him for like 7 hours, and he didn't have anything to eat, and I would just keep recording. I wouldn't do this again in the future. So there was a lot of learning process there, because we didn't know which language we should shoot in, and it was dragging on forever with lights and sound and all these things. And then we filmed the other activist, the other main character, in London at the end of 2017, and then we went to Hong Kong 3 times in 2018, 2 times or 3 times, I think, in 2019, and once more in 2020. In the meantime, we also filmed in Germany, because one of the activists, Ray, went into exile in Germany, so we filmed there. He filmed himself while he was waiting for the refugee status. So we ended in summer 2020 when the national security law was implemented. Yeah, so it's quite a long process.
So those activists that you are following in the film are really captivating characters. They are impressive because they are young people, but they have strong convictions. And as someone puts it in the film, they have the courage of their convictions. So it's a crazy mix of young people with strong convictions and who are bold and who are trying to explain people why they should follow their ideology, and they are actually acting on. So how was your relationship? How is your relationship with them, and what have you learned on a personal note from them?
Yes, your description is very accurate. I really appreciate that you see this way, because I felt the same way about them. I'm extremely impressed by them, and the idea was really to showcase this to a wider audience, not only for the international audience but also for the Hong Kong audience, because there have been a lot of misconceptions but also misrepresentations of localist. Localism has multiple aspects, multiple perspectives. Some of them are not really pleasant. So in the beginning there was a lot of anger directed against mainland tourists, which were over flooding certain areas in Hong Kong, and it was really ugly scene. So the media, the academic mainstream in Hong Kong, for example, completely focused on these elements and said, okay, these are xenophobic, right-wing nutters, and this is what localism is. And I did around 80 interviews over many years, and I found no, that's not the truth. Yeah, if you talk to them, get to know them for a long period of time, and we did multiple interviews over years. So I got quite close to them, and I think they trusted me, and we realized that they're very thoughtful and willing to risk a lot. I think for the first time in Hong Kong, this generation and these localists were willing to put their own personal future on the line, and you can't then say these localists are doing this for personal gain. So what personal gain do you have if you go into prison for 6 years? So I was really impressed by their seriousness. Sometimes in the beginning they might have been naive, they wouldn't have thought some of these things would end like this, but if they took on a cause, they will go through with it, and no matter what would happen. So we're getting to know them over time and forging relatively, I would say, friendship bonds with them. From my perspective, it's really friendship with a lot of them. We keep in touch over all the time, try to support them mentally if we can. I think it has been a very fruitful and very rewarding journey. It's sometimes very sad, of course, to see the outcomes of their trials and what they and their families have endured. But I really have learned a lot from them. I have learned a lot from them. And if you're in your early 20s and you risk everything, I think we can all learn from that, just based on your convictions. So I want to do this for freedom. I want to do this for what I believe. I think it's very impressive.
This is wonderful, and thanks to documentary filmmaking, you were able to be close to those people and maybe influence each other and so on.
Yes.
So this is very fascinating. So what's very also interesting about the film is that it's coming out in such a context with a lot at stake, and from a part of the world where sometimes it's hard to get everyone's truth. So it's not only a documentary, but it's also like a document of history that can be looked at in a few decades, and so it's a good piece of testimony. And also, this is a documentary that is here to actually spark conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
How do you expect people? to react to the film, to receive the film. Yeah, what do you expect them maybe to do after watching the film?
Yes, thank you very much for your very kind comments on it. Yes, that's what I hope that the film can achieve: is spark conversation, but also being a certain a document of history, because we won't be able to see them in these settings again, and this is a very interesting time on history,
Absolutely.
which is unfortunately gone in Hong Kong. The idea is to look at the complexity of the situation, look at the entire history of the movement, and through that, although at the moment it looks like dark times, I think we can learn from the resilience of these people, how we can look at the future in Hong Kong, and what kind of ideas can we learn from localism. How did localism question the status quo? What did they propose? They were just at the beginning. So I think the beginning of imagining a future Hong Kong, and I think this is what people now in Hong Kong can continue, or if they're in exile, they can continue thinking about this. Okay, independence was an idea. Do we want to continue? How can we continue? Protecting Hong Kong identity was an idea, Hong Kong culture. How can we continue this? How do we do this in exile? Do we have to be in Hong Kong? What can people in Hong Kong do? Yeah. Ideas of like the yellow economic circle, this economic resistance movement in Hong Kong. How can this further grow? Can this go overseas and all these? I think there's a lot of ideas there that the film and the activists in the film already hint towards and mention. And I think it's now for Hong Kongers or people who want to support Hong Kongers to continue thinking about these ideas and start a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. This is very, very impressive. So maybe one of my final questions. So on a personal and professional note, would you say that there is a before and after this project? What I mean is, what can you take away from this whole journey in the way you approach your work, your research?
Yes, I've learned a lot from this. My admiration for filmmakers has even grown further. I mean, I always dreamt to be a filmmaker, and I never dared it until this project. So, because I think it's so complicated and so much pressure, and it really is. I'm really impressed with any filmmaker who can do this. So I think I learned from this in terms of organizational skills on a personal level. Then from a research perspective, of course, it has benefited my research a lot. I learned much more following these friends and colleagues and activists for a longer period. But I think also as I said already, I was deeply impressed by the activists, but also by the commitment of the crew and all the support we got from so many people. We have a long list of people we have to thank, and a lot of people from 11 nations helped us to make this project possible for free, for very little money, longer hours. We all worked for very hard for a long period of time just to make this happen. So that means there's a lot of support for Hong Kong. There's a lot of support among Hong Kongers, solidarity and all this, which I think should keep us, we should keep in mind, and something we can build on in the future. For the project now, the next step is that we want to build up a website where we can showcase more stills and mini clips from the film, and then create a community on the website that helps us to get feedback on the film, because we want to create a short video, a short version of the film, like a 10-minute version, condensed, on what is important on localism or independence movement, that can be kept and maybe be screened in schools and universities overseas, and everybody's interested in that. And we want to have then feedback from everybody. What do you think is the essence of localism? When you want to show this to kids who now just emigrated to the UK or Europe, left Hong Kong, and in 5 years they want to know, okay, who's Ray Wong, who's Edward Leung, Louis Loud, who are they, what did they do? And then this is the next step here. So keeping the spirit of this co-production of knowledge, we want to get everybody involved. Like the team before, we always work together for ideas, and this is how we want to proceed. Yeah.
This makes a lot of sense. So this is great, this is wonderful. And yeah, I mean, just wanted to bounce back on what you say, that you know, we're dreaming of becoming a filmmaker, but you know, like the fact to present the film at the festival here, and then to keep going further with the website and so on, like you are doing all of this because you have this passion, this inner motivation, and this thirst for you know, understanding, analyzing complex issues. And so when you have this, you can achieve a lot, and that's what you did. You did a film, you will do even more. So no, congratulations, it's impressive.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
And yeah, it's very, very impressive, because I make documentaries myself as well.
Yes, yes.
And I love to see like such projects that are made over the course of a lot of years, and you have to be really passionate to keep going. And so yeah, thank you for offering us this screening yesterday.
Thank you so much for your support and your excellent feedback and your passion for this. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.